Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I am out on my home river, the American River, or the Lower American as many would call it. Today I am traditional wood float fishing. More times than not nowadays, with the technology that we have, wood float had become a thing of the past, but I'm still a big fan of wood float, so today I'll be fishing a slip float setup with a wood float. All it is a slip bopper setup, stagger with a leader with small shots to ensure that the bait comes down into the water column where the fishes are holding. For float fishing, it is very important to have good float gear. The rod is the most important piece of tackle. For float fishing, I prefer a 10-foot rod or above. The bait of choice today I will be using is just half a nightcrawler or half a earthworm as many would call it. All I will be doing is threading this half nightcrawler onto a straight shank hook. The reason I prefer a straight shank hook instead of a J-style hook like an octopus is because I want my bait to be riding vertical in the water column as the shots bring down the bait. All I will do is give it a cast upstream and watch the float. It is something magical and I got bit. All it is just the angler watching the float as it dips slowly underneath the water. When unsure, just set the hook. I ended up hooking into this small nice wild trout, and this fish was gorgeous. Even though the rod is an extremely long rod and some folks might question why such a long rod is needed, it plays the fish very well because this is a very light action float rod rated for 2 to 6 pounds. I also prefer to use barbless hook, therefore making the release quite easy. This is a gorgeous little wild rainbow trout. I will show him to you guys real quick and I will let him go. Thanks for playing, buddy. Off you go. The biggest difference between a wood float and a plastic float tends to be buoyancy. A plastic float has better buoyancy, but it is far more expensive than a wood float. I still prefer a wood float despite plastic float taking over the market nowadays. There's just something magical about watching a traditional wood float disappear underneath the water. And by watching this float, I ended up getting bit again. I tend not to like to fish in the rain, but with the erratic weather we've been having out here on the west coast, fishing in the rain seems to be my only option nowadays on my days off. So therefore I will muster today and try to catch a few fish. Hopefully the storm passes and I'll get some sunny skies before the sun sets. This is another nice wild rainbow trout. He is gorgeous, full fin, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. Thanks for playing, buddy. Off you go. The water I'm looking for whenever I'm float fishing is I tend to look for walking pace water. A lot of folks will say you can fish a float in almost any kind of water, but I find its most effectiveness to be almost a walking pace style water. In my opinion, float fishing is the easiest way for new anglers that want to target salmon, steelhead, or trout in general to learn how to fish. I ended up getting bit, and this was a decent little wild rainbow trout. I know a lot of folks will tend to say float guys are crazy with those long ass rods that we tend to use, but trust me, these rods are rated and they play the fish very well. They're almost like fly rods in a sense. These ultra-light action float rods rated for 2 to 6 pounds will fight these little rainbows very well, and they can also handle some bigger fishes, even the winter steelheads in my local river. However, today I am not targeting those fish. I am waiting until the new year. This is a gorgeous wild rainbow trout, full fin and very brightly colored. I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. He's such a feisty little fellow. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit and off you go. Water in front of me here is flowing a little bit quicker than I would typically float fish, but what I have found is by holding this long rod up high, I can actually just skate it across, and I ended up getting bit. What this does is this will actually slow down the descent of the leader, giving it some time for fish downstream to swim up and pick up the bait or the offering. This is a gorgeous little wild rainbow trout. He fought pretty well on this ultralight float rod. Float fishing is a mainstay and a staple of many salmon and steelhead angler, especially in rivers. It is incredibly effective and quite an easy way to detect a bite. This is a gorgeous wild little rainbow trout. Not big by any metric or standard, but very beautiful for my home river. There are some winter fish around, and I suspect these guys are slowly coming up to target these winter steelhead that are starting to spawn soon. So in this scenario, as I switch to the other side of the river, this section is a lot much slower, and this is perfect for float fishing in my opinion. I ended up letting the float ride the whole flow down, and then I got bit at the end of the swing. This is a beautiful scenario where a float works perfectly. I am thumbing and letting out line slowly from the spool, and all I will do is watch until the float dips under, and then I will collect the line and set the hook. I ended up hooking into another nice little wild rainbow trout, and this is the effectiveness of a float, especially if there aren't any other anglers around. An angler can actually let the float ride the whole way down of the river flow, and you could cover a whole lot of water, especially float fishing. This is another nice little wild rainbow trout. He is very feisty, very bright, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. These fish are really pretty, especially during the winter time. Thanks for playing, little guy. Rest up a bit and off you go. Now in this fishing scenario, there's a technique that I like to do which I call hanging the float. So I will cast it crosswise and I will hang it at the end of the flow. What this will do is as the float gets trapped in the flows, the bait will gradually descend towards the bottom, and this can often invoke quite a bit of a strike if there was a fish at the end of the flow. I have found this technique to be quite effective, especially if the water is moving a little bit faster than I like it to. I ended up getting bit, and all I did was collect the line and set the hook. This was another nice little wild rainbow trout. Hopefully this episode demonstrates the effectiveness of the wood float. I know a lot of guys out there have abandoned these floats in favor of the plastic floats made by Drennan, but these floats are cheaper and can still be quite effective. Especially if you're a new angler and don't want to spend a ton of money, these floats will continue to have a spot in my tackle box despite the years that have gone by and everyone has replaced theirs with plastic. This is a gorgeous little wild rainbow trout. I will show him to you guys real quick and I will let him go. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit and off you go. Overall, it was just a great day to be out on my home river. Despite the erratic weather, I did manage to pick up a few fish on the wood float. Thank you guys for watching and stay tuned for the Q&A. Hello ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost I would like just to wish you guys, hope you guys had a great Christmas and hopefully this year wish you guys a great Happy New Year's. I've been getting quite a few questions in regards to myself personally and the direction of the channel going into 2025, and I just want to address you guys and thank you guys so much for joining me throughout all these last 2 years being on YouTube for the first time. I'm not new to social media, but I am new on a Western platform, so I just want to thank you guys all so much for your love and support, because I never thought this channel would be popular with the West, but it goes to show I can't exactly predict what will happen in the future. So with that being said, let's get to the Q&A, because a lot of people have been wondering whether or not I'm some kind of AI or am I an actual person. So I'm going to answer some of the most frequently asked questions on this channel. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how long have I been fishing for? Well, to tell you guys the truth, I've been fishing for most of my life. I'd say for 2025, it will be 30 years now that I've been fishing. So I've been fishing since I was a very little kid. And even to this day, fishing is still one of my favorite hobby and pastime. I started off catching the common species, as with most kids across the West or America would be catching, such as your panfish and whatever that was swimming around the local waters around my area. So with that being said, I've been fishing for pretty much most of my younger life and my adult life. So everything you guys see on my channel is experience accrued from 30 years of fishing from the bank, watercraft, and with guides, you name it. So one of the questions that also came up quite a lot was, Originally, the channel went on a text basis, and it was pretty much an ASMR style that was really popular in East Asia and Asia in general. But why did I switch to an audio format and a narration format? Well, for the most part, it has to deal with content theft. What has happened with YouTube in the last few years, for those that aren't aware, is there are groups of content farms that are coming out from Southeast Asia. I call them the piracy countries, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, you name it. And what they're doing is they were taking content and they were voicing over it on into shorts. And the goal of these content farms is to pump out as much content as possible for clicks and views to generate that YouTube ad revenue. And what happened was a lot of my viewers, not subscribers necessarily, but they would see these shorts. If some of you guys haven't seen already on YouTube or Facebook Reels, what happened is they would repost clips of my long form content and they would voice over it, and the information they were giving was incorrect. So then when people would come on and see my long form content, and they'll look at me and be like, what are you saying? Because I just seen your videos and you were saying this. And somehow I would think to myself, like, what are you guys talking about? I've never said something like that. So then I ended up tracing one of these, how shall I say it, one of these content creators down, and it turned out this man wasn't even from the America. He was out there from Indonesia, and he was using my stuff and molding it with a bunch of other content creators, fishermen, and turning them into shorts and voicing them over with AI. And that ended up causing all kinds of mess. So in order to combat this whole situation, I decided that the channel had to move in a new direction in order to, surprisingly, for age of information, we are also living in an age of disinformation and misinformation. So in order to combat that disinformation and misinformation, I figure it's better if I just voice it over rather than continue with the text, because YouTube is evolving and there's no way to really fight off these content farmers. So another question I've been getting quite a bit too is, in the event that I refer a lot of folks to as casual anglers or enthusiasts, what do I mean by that? And I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, so I'm going to explain, because YouTube does have an analytics section for its content creator, and I could see exactly how people find my channel, the keyword that people are using to find certain videos. So I do try and catch the algorithm, and based on this channel alone in itself, most people that tend to view my content are casual anglers. And I don't mean this in a bad way, in a sense. And some people took it out of context when some of my videos where I've referred to some anglers as casual anglers and an enthusiast. So what is the difference? And the best way I could describe that is, think of an athlete. You have your high school athlete, your college athlete, and you have your professional athletes. Your high school athlete might just play a sport specifically because, they enjoy doing so, and then your college athlete might play a sport because they're looking to go into the professional league or so, or even if not, they're playing it more so for its empowerment. And then you have your professional athlete, and on that level they're playing it as a means to provide themselves with a living, enjoying something they do but now using it to make a living. Well, for the most part, fishing can be applied the exact same way. And when I say a casual angler, what I mean is, a casual angler, you just want to go out there, whether or not just catch a few fish. You're not worried about the gear, the tackle. You're not worried about how many fish you catch in general. At the end of the day, you're just out there, get a few bites or so, take the kids out, maybe you, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, who knows. You guys go out there and you just want to put a few fish on the bank. Now, that doesn't make you a bad angler necessarily. What it means is you're just not as into
the sport as most people, like, say, a professional black bass fisherman. A professional black bass fisherman is fishing because he is going to make a living instead of being a casual angler. Because if he was a casual angler, he is not going to make a living professionally fishing. So I hope that clarifies the whole idea between a casual angler and an enthusiast in general, because for the most part, the casual anglers outnumber on my channel in general like 9 to 1. For every one person that asks me about gear and such, 90% of them are just looking for ways and where to catch a few fish. They're not looking into the how, when, where, why. They're looking into the where are you catching a fish and how it was done for that time and being. That's it. So there's nothing wrong with being a casual angler. Just an enthusiast is looking at different way and means to how it's done. So I hope that clarifies it for you guys. So another question I get asked quite a bit too is in regards to trophy fishing. A lot of anglers often ask me quite a bit about, why don't I target bigger fish? Why don't I always just try and go out there and catch the biggest fish I can? Trophy fishing in general, as I've mentioned before in many of my videos, I consider trophy fishing to be a huge waste of time. And the reason for that is most trophy guys are looking for self-validation. And I don't need that self-validation because I've been fishing for a very long time and I know I can catch fish. For example, take trophy fishing, for example, black bass trophy fishing. In the black bass trophy fishing world, a 10-pound fish or above will be considered a trophy black bass. However, how it is caught, and everyone has a different idea of what a trophy fish is on methods of how it is caught and etc. So for a good example is, for a very long time out in Lake Eufaula in Texas, a lot of guides would take their clients and they would go bedfish for black bass in general. A lot of guys would say that's invalid, and some guys would say it is valid. So at the end of the day, it just stirs up a huge controversy. And I personally think, me as an angler, I enjoy just catching fish in general. I don't care whether or not, as I mentioned in my videos, if I caught a 5-inch trout from a small little mountain stream or a 10-pound planter trout that came out from a concrete raceway, I really don't care. Because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of my channel is having good fundamentals to go out there and target fish successfully based on the species and what's happening around that time of year or day. And that's the whole purpose of this channel. So I hope that clarifies why I really don't like trophy fishing in general, because in my personal opinion, trophy fishing is pretty much a waste of time in my opinion. Why target always just one big fish when, you know, there's a whole sea of fish for you to target, whether it be a small fish or whether it be a giant marlin out on the Atlantic coast. So at the end of the day, just go out there and go catch a fish. So overall, guys, thank you so much for joining me during these last 2 years, even through the changes and such that had come about. Thank you guys so much, and have a happy New Year's to 2025. Wish you guys all good health and be prosperous out there for 2025. And we'll start 2025 with a bang soon. Thank y'all so much for joining me, and until next time, tight lines, y'all.